What's up, you guys? Adam here with Anabolic Climbing, and today it's time to break down a really famous piece of content from a Mr. Dave McLeod, trad legend, Scottish legend, all in all badass, and for 2 months, a couple years ago, he ate nothing but McDonald's patties and eggs. So he goes over how it affects his mood, his climbing, his performance. So am I in a position to critique Dave's climbing? God, no, he's a legend. Am I in a position to break down his protocols, his blood work, and some of his changes in performance? You bet your ass I am. So if you guys like these kind of breakdowns, please hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell. Helps the channel out tremendously. And without further ado, let's hop into Mr. Dave McLeod and expand on some of the science that he is not fully up to date with. So first things first, let's hop into his blood work panel.
And I don't need the bun, just the...
We get it, Dave. You are a sucker for Shemak dough. So Dave seems to prefer most of his diets to be ketogenic in nature. You can see that he has keto, carnivore, and McDonald's beef patties. And when you compare that versus his baseline of moderate carbs moderate carbs in general, he seems to lose an average of about 3 kilograms or a little over 6 pounds. So do we think that that's coming from a lifestyle choice or from caloric restriction? And the answer is lifestyle. How do I know this? So when you are hanging out in a ketogenic state, what happens is your body tends to flush glycogen pretty quickly. And when you're in ketosis, you're basically using fat as your energy storage. How does this sort of express itself? And I'm going to show you an example in a little bit. So the more glycogen that you hold, you will actually hold that as weight. It could be looking fuller, looking more round, looking more pumped. And I'm going to show you this through the context of a bodybuilder. This Indian gentleman pre-contest was basically looking dramatically flatter, having less pop, less roundness. Dude eats a bunch of carbs and fafoof. It looks like he adds a couple inches to his arm. And sure, is the lighting a little bit better? Yeah, but obviously there's more vascularity in his chest. It's going way further. Same thing goes with the veins. Everything just looks rounder. And the same thing actually happens to us as climbers. When we end up having higher amounts of carbohydrates, we have more glycogen, and that is useful. That is useful in the weight room. That is useful for really powerful projects where we need to pull really hard. If you are solely going in a fat source mechanism, could you do this for like trad or for endurance climbs? You can, and it might be helpful to you just to not have, or to have a little bit more of a straightforward or linear energy source, but you're not going to get some of the quick digesting energy that you would get from carbs, which is just faster as far as being able to transfer and use that energy. But how does this apply to Dave, right? Dave, as he's going through his video, talks about eating as much as he wants. So I don't think he's in a deep calorie deficit. So it's fair to assume that the difference in weight loss is not in fat that's happening, although he might be losing 1 to 2 pounds of fat when he goes keto versus going with carbs. It's more than likely glycogen and water. So with that knowledge, is that a thing that we could potentially use to peak if we're trying to be as light as we possibly can on a climb? Yeah, you could run keto for 2 to 4 weeks, flush all your excess glycogen, and have a 3 to 6 pound difference when you are getting ready for your climb. But there's a cost to that, and we're going to talk about it. In general, when I look at Dave's LDL, you'll see it elevated in the 120s and getting higher as he goes into more of a carnivore or keto thing. Is that inherently a problem on its own? It's not great. By the time you're up to the 127s, I would recommend hopping on some ezetimibe. It's not a thing that could limit performance like a statin could. And also, if you take it for an extended period of time, you can get your LDL into the sub 70 range, hopefully up to sub 55. If you take a look at the cardiovascular suggestions for having cardioprotective LDL, we used to think that having higher HDL would be more beneficial and more protective. It seems to be a better marker of health than it is for preventing cardiac events. LDL being sub 55 is extraordinarily protective as far as limiting the likelihood of cardiac events. The other part is his total cholesterol is above 200, which is a little high. I think he would be a prime candidate for ezetimibe or maybe a statin. Additionally, I'm not too concerned about his magnesium. That's easy that he could treat. Same thing with his bilirubin. But the main thing that's missing here is we don't know what his labs look like. I don't know what's going on with his hormones. I don't know what's happening with his A1C. I would intuit that his A1C is probably getting better in a 2-month exposure of a ketogenic diet. It usually takes around 12 months before the A1C tends to go the other way in being in ketosis chronically, which is why Paul Saladino and some of the other guys opted to add in honey and fruit into their diets. Extended periods of ketosis can actually make you more insulin sensitive, funny enough, but that's like in periods of 12 months or more. For 3 to 6 months, it's protective for insulin resistance. But yeah, you need to take care of your triglycerides and your LDL and your cholesterol if you're going to run a ketogenic diet. Next up, I realize that Dave is doing this as a diet model that is helpful to rock climbers for peaking for a climb. But if you want to flush glycogen, yeah, that's a mechanism of losing water weight. Your other options are a diuretic. Your other options, and this is really to everyone here because my audience is enhanced, is to use a goddamn GLP-1. Or you could just tough it out and diet more. You could opt to flush that glycogen, or you could just get leaner. Given how Dave didn't really seem like he was suffering through his diet changes, he probably wasn't losing that much fat and probably could have had some additional fat to lose. When we take a look at Dave on the wall, he's obviously pretty lean, and this lighting isn't perfect, but he has some additional fat that he could have lost. Does that mean he could have cut some calories a little bit and lost another 2, 3, 5 pounds during a 2-month cut? Yeah, absolutely. Over a 2-month cut, even when I was growing into said cut, I lost a minimum of 10 pounds. And while you might say to yourself, Adam, you were fatter at the starting weight, that's completely valid. But I also ended up probably about as lean as Dave was at the end of the cut. Could we both have pushed more? Yeah, totally. But he's also surprising himself as far as his additional gains. And yeah, if you're going to lose some additional weight, not surprising that you can get some boost in strength. All in all, I say this not as a critique of Dave, but really as a critique of adding additional context to ketogenic diet. I do think that it has a decent amount of upside for peaking for a climb. I also think that with additional tools of pharmacology, whether you're using a GLP-1, whether you're using ezetimibe for protection for your cardiovascular health, or potentially a statin if that's a thing that you tolerate once a week to get rid of some of the excess LDL, I think that those are absolutely necessary, and potentially red rice yeast as well, if you're looking for some lighter weight ways of controlling LDL. I think that it's fine to run a ketogenic protocol for a couple of months to peak for a climb, but also make sure that you're taking the proper ancillaries around it to protect yourself when you take some of the more extreme mechanisms that are going to be deleterious to heart health. As far as your GLP-1 of choice, Retta is the obvious option. It seems to be the best at reversing NAFLD. And yeah, especially if you have a predisposition to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, I cannot think of a better mechanism than Retta to basically focus on burning liver fat out of the gate. All this to say, be responsible when you're taking certain diet protocols into consideration. And all in all, it's a good tool in the toolbox. I'm glad we had an opportunity to cover it. Anyway, if you guys enjoy these kind of breakdowns, please drop a comment, hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell. Will I go keto? Probably not. I fucking love me some carbs. And I'm sure it's a thing that I could do, but I have enough on my plate right now. I'll consider that another time. More than likely, if I wanted to get rid of some excess water weight, telmisartan is an option. Hydrochlorothiazide, I believe, is one of the lighter weight. I want to double check that. Options. I believe this is the. You could take low dose hydrochlorothiazide, and it's pretty tolerable versus just running something like a ketogenic diet. Gross. The other option, and I would probably consider this for myself, is to just get fucking leaner. I still have weight that I could lose, and I would probably do that versus just going full-blown keto. Anyway, if you have questions about PEDs, peptides, and want to ask questions, you guys are always welcome to book a consult with me at anabolicclimbing@gmail.com. If you guys want to get blood work and with better access to labs than what Dave had, Anabolic Insights, code climbing for 10% off, is a great way to go ahead and do that. And if you guys want to join one of the fastest growing communities of PED enthusiast rock climbers, you can join the Discord in the description box below. Anyways, I appreciate you guys as always. I am Adam with Anabolic Climbing, wishing you good luck, happy sending, and I will see you in the next one where we're going to talk about the differences in my hand size now that I took a little break from GH. Cheers.